Wayne Gretzky. Shohei Ohtani.
I played baseball, but it was sort of slow.
Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a massive show ahead for you all today. We're gonna do some updates on the travesty of a bill that's been dubbed a big, beautiful bill. We're also going to talk a little bit about this back and forth between President Donald Trump and Jerome Powell, who of course is the head of the Federal Reserve. Trump is very salty about the fact that Powell refuses to lower interest rates further. There's a very specific reason why he has made that decision. We're gonna get into the details of that story as well. And also, President Donald Trump claims that Israel has agreed to a ceasefire. Israel says otherwise, so we'll tell you where that issue currently stands a little later in the first hour as well. In the second hour, Cenk Uygur will be joining me to talk about more stories, including princess treatment in modern day relationships. What is that and is it a good thing? We'll discuss that and more. TYT.com/join to become a member if you'd like to support this show and keep us independent from corporate influence. You can also help support the show for free by liking and sharing the stream if you're watching us live. All right, without further ado, let's get to our first story.
You see the numbers, and I'm sure we'll get into it, of Gen Z and college-educated Gen Z, college-educated female Gen Z who are voting for this in New York. There's a big portion of Gen Z that needs to go to American re-education camps. And I know what that basically means, re-education camps. I'm not talking about, the really, really bad kind. But there's a whole segment of society that genuinely needs to be re-educated on what America is and what America is not. And America is not Zohran Mamdani. You're telling me that a democratic socialist communist jihadist is gonna be mayor?
Yeah, Adam Sosnick wanting to send Americans to re-education camps simply because they have a different political or economic perspective makes it pretty clear that maybe he's the one who needs a refresher course on what America really is. And no, Zohran Mamdani is not a jihadist. He's just smeared as one by those who don't like the fact that he's ballsy enough to criticize Israel, which is basically a third rail among most American politicians, for reasons that were actually perfectly outlined by Libertarian Congressman Thomas Massie.
Everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What does that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are, firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
every member has something like this?
I don't know how it works on the Democrat side, but that's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to DC, you go have lunch with them. I guarantee there's some spreadsheet at AIPAC where the AIPAC dude who's matched up with the congressman is there, and then all the congressman's votes on the issue. Oh, has the congressman been to Israel? They pay for trips for congressmen and their spouses to go to Israel.
I'm pretty sure it works the same way on the Democratic side, just based on their behavior. But nonetheless, Mamdani also happens to be literally the only New York City mayoral candidate who stated during a debate that he wanted to stay in the city to, quote, address the concerns of New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. Every single other candidate named a foreign country that they wanted to travel to immediately after getting elected as mayor. 4 of them, including former disgraced New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, declared that their country of choice is Israel. And I know how hard it is for someone like Sosnick to understand, because of the fact that he has family in Israel, that most Americans actually want leaders who want to take care of business here at home. Plus, New York City is still a Democratic stronghold, and Democrats aren't exactly vibing with genocide in Gaza these days.
Andrew Cuomo, during the primary, attacked Mamdani as being insufficiently pro-Israel. I'm not quite sure the former governor understood how much the politics have changed around this issue among Democrats. What are we talking about here? All right, who Democrats sympathize more with, Israelis or Palestinians? In 2017, the Democratic Party was a pro-Israeli party. Look at this. They sympathized with the Israelis by 13 points, more with the Israelis than the Palestinians. But look at this sea change. Now Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians by 43 points. Oh my God, that is a change in the margin of 56 points over the course of just 8 years.
Well, I mean, when you get nearly 2 years of these insane images and videos showing children being slaughtered, hearing, stories and testimony from American doctors who risked their lives to go to Gaza in order to try to save people's lives, when they come back and they talk about how infants, toddlers are showing up in the hospital with bullet wounds to their heads, it's gonna start changing people's minds about whether it makes sense to support Israel at any and all costs. But nonetheless, I really do want to try to explain the rise of Mamdani, a Democratic socialist who does appear poised, at least for now, to win the general election and become New York City's new mayor. His popularity really isn't that hard to understand because his campaign emphasized policies that redistribute wealth and tackle the precarity American workers have been suffering, rather than protect the status quo that has severely widened economic inequality, especially in a high cost of living city like New York. It's not some fluke or an accident that young voters find Mamdani's socialist policies appealing, especially at a time when achieving what used to be considered normal milestones, like buying a home, is really out of reach for most young Americans. Now look, the cost of living has exploded while wages have largely remained stagnant since the 1970s. Homelessness, as you see from this video, has exploded across the country in recent years, and it isn't rare to see makeshift structures housing people on the side of highways. This is the richest country in the world, and this is what we're dealing with. Homelessness in the United States has been a rising trend for years, in fact, since 2017. According to data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, there were 771,480 people recorded as homeless in 2024, nearly 1 million people. That's insane. That represents an increase of over 18% from just a year earlier in 2023. The data show that 36% of the homeless were unsheltered. That is, they lived in places not considered fit for human habitation, with the remainder living in emergency shelters, transitional housing, or safe haven programs. By the way, this survey does not count people who live in overcrowded apartments or in government subsidized accommodation as homeless. Mamdani's campaign made a point to address housing and more. He even made a point to reach out to Trump voters to get a better understanding of why they decided to support the president in the last race.
And we didn't just win places that were considered to be progressive. We won neighborhoods that voted for Donald Trump. We won neighborhoods that voted for Eric Adams. New York was the state that swung most towards Donald Trump, 11.5 points. And that swing happened far from the caricatures of Trump voters. It happened in the hearts of immigrant New York City. And when I went to Fordham Road in the Bronx, when I went to Hillside Avenue in Queens a few days after that election, and I asked Democrats, who did you vote for and why? They told me again and again, they voted for Donald Trump because they remembered being able to afford their life 4 years ago more than they could today. They cited their rent, their groceries, their child care. And I asked them, what would it take to bring you back? And they said a relentless focus on an economic agenda.
And that's what he did. Focusing on the bread and butter issues was a smart campaign strategy for Mamdani, someone who clearly wanted to win, who wanted to, touch the hearts of the very constituents who ended up supporting him, especially at a time when the other Democratic candidates were preaching for more of the same, with maybe a few tweaks around the edges. In fact, now that I think about it, Mamdani's rise really should not be hard for Trump supporters like Sosnick to understand, considering their beloved Gulf resort dweller paid a lot of lip service to the economic frustrations of working Americans as well. It's just that Trump clearly wasn't serious about most of it or any of it. The president's so-called big beautiful bill ensures deep cuts to the nation's social safety net that helps the poorest Americans, while the richest will get to enjoy even deeper tax cuts.
One of the biggest battle lines when it comes to the president's tax cut and spending bill are the cuts to Medicaid and the very real impact those cuts will have on millions of Americans, especially in rural communities. Nearly 12 million Americans are expected to lose health insurance with this bill. That includes almost 2 million in rural areas. And one report estimates nearly 400 rural hospitals would be at risk of closing if the proposed cuts go into effect.
Pretty sure that there will be some political consequences for this bill, but notably, the Senate version of the big travesty of a bill cuts $1.1 trillion from Medicaid and also slashes funding for SNAP benefits, food assistance. While the United States is already spending $1 trillion a year just to service our $37 trillion in federal debt, Trump's budget bill exacerbates that situation by tacking on trillions more in debt. The tax savings provisions that would actually benefit ordinary Americans, like no tax on tips and overtime, well, that will be means tested. If you're making more than $150,000 a year, you will not qualify for it. And those tax savings provisions for working class Americans are set to expire in just 4 years. The tax cuts for the rich, oh, don't worry, those are permanent. And as less and less taxpayer money goes toward taking care of our own here in the United States, more and more gets doled out for Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza and the West Bank. The United States has provisionally agreed via a memorandum of understanding, MOU, to provide Israel with $3.8 billion per year through 2028. Funneling cash to Israel is the most bipartisan effort imaginable. So let's actually start with the Biden administration. Between October 7th, 2023 and November of 2024, the United States has enacted legislation providing at least $12.5 billion in direct military aid to Israel, which includes $3.8 billion in line with the current MOU and $8.7 billion from a supplemental appropriations act in April 2024. There are other estimates with higher numbers because these estimates actually take into consideration the cost of restocking American weapons that had been sent to Israel. So Linda Bilmes et al. From Brown University have reported that Israel received $17.9 billion in US military aid during this period, a figure that additionally accounts for the cost to the United States Defense Department of replenishing the stock of weapons provided to Israel. Not only does the United States largely provide offensive weaponry for Israel, American taxpayers are also maintaining Israel's defense capabilities as well. Additionally, $500 million a year is slated for Israeli and joint US-Israeli missile defense programs in which the two countries collaborate on the research, development, and production of these systems used by Israel, including Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow 2. Now, that's a pretty comprehensive list of taxpayer resources the Biden administration was willing to take out of your pocket and ship on over to a country that's been occupying, persecuting, and slaughtering innocent Palestinians literally for decades. But there's a new stooge in town, and his administration ain't any better. On this matter, I mean, just take a look at what Trump has managed to do in the short time that he's been in office for a second term. In March of this year, Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, put out a statement bragging about the redistribution of your wealth to Israel, writing that since taking office, the Trump administration has approved nearly $12 billion in major FMS, that means weapon sales, to Israel. The State Department, by the way, also reported that as of April of this year, the United States has 751 active foreign military sales cases with Israel that are valued at nearly $40 billion. That's 40 billion of your dollars if you're an American taxpayer. US aid reportedly accounts for 15% of Israel's defense budget. Americans are dealing with a housing crisis, drug overdose epidemic, unsafe drinking water, unimaginable economic inequality, a broken healthcare system, and more. Yet a whopping 78% of Israel's arms imports came from and were paid for by the United States. No money for Medicaid, but endless funds for genocide. So if anyone is wondering why all of these disgusting smears about Mamdani being a jihadist or an alleged anti-Semite, why they're not working, maybe it's because the candidate's economic priorities are shared by the very voters who helped him trounce Andrew Cuomo. Refusing to serve Israel before the American people should not be controversial. Refusing to prioritize New Yorkers as the mayor of New York City should be. So that's my take on Mamdani. And this is the winning strategy. You focus on the issues that impact the pocketbooks of Americans, make their lives better, okay? Don't feed into the BS culture war topics that are only meant to distract from the economic policies that Americans want to focus on and hear about. Focus on the bread and butter issues. Focus on what your policies are and how you intend to make people's lives better. There was a lot of that in Trump's campaign, regardless of how you feel about him, and we all know that he wasn't serious about any of it. With Mamdani, I think there's a possibility that he is very serious about these ideas and that he intends to try to implement them. Nonetheless, smearing him as a jihadist because he has the audacity to be openly critical of the genocide that Israel is currently engaging in is ridiculous to me, and it's not working, and I'm happy to see that. We gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got a lot more to get into, including this supposed ceasefire deal that Trump has allegedly brokered and Israel has allegedly agreed to. They haven't. And then we'll also talk a little bit about where interest rates are headed in the United States. Come right back.
I started using the word, the groceries.
Thank you so much for your comment. Gary is a member of ours and writes in to say, this is the kind of journalism that makes me proud to be a TYT member. Thank you for your support. You give us a voice here. We're able to do what we do and speak as candidly as we do because of our members. So thank you again for your support. Moonshine Dragon says, even if you're not on Medicaid, this bill will affect you. Hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, doctors and nurses will lose their jobs, and staff will be fired. It's not just the people on Medicaid. That is a good point, and it's part of the reason why I chose that video showing how hospital closures are very likely to happen as a result of this bill, should it pass in the current way that it's written, and it looks like that will be the case. Helen007 says, Cuomo's team darkened Mamdani's skin and lengthened his beard in their campaign ads. Absolutely disgusting. AOC endorsing him seems to have broken Chris Cuomo's brain, and he now spews disgusting nonsense. Wanting to make life easier for the working class is apparently a step too far. Insane. Helen, you know I totally agree with everything you wrote there. And look, I think Andrew Cuomo is a huge liability for his younger brother, Chris Cuomo, because he keeps trying to provide cover for his terrible brother. And then he makes himself look really bad in doing so. Maybe stop defending your brother. Maybe your brother is a terrible candidate. He's a disgraced former governor who made the intentional decision of sending elderly people who had COVID back to nursing homes so they can then spread it. And a lot of people died as a result of that. He was also credibly accused of all sorts of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. I mean, just disgraced in every way, and somehow his brother is still providing cover for this guy publicly. Maybe don't do that. Anyway, let's go over to Sarah, who says, love your top, Anna, thank you. It's actually a dress from the 50s. It's a vintage dress that I barely fit into. So since I was feeling a little, slimmer today, I'm like, I better put this on and make some use out of this dress. J Bills 3000 says, how is Mamdani jihad? He's not. It's just like, it's actually insanely gross how brazen and overt Islamophobia is in this country. It really is. Jonah Morton says, how in 2025 has politics become rocket science? I don't know. I mean, I feel like I think it was Carville who said it's the economy, stupid, or maybe it was Bill Clinton. Carville worked for Bill Clinton's campaign. Anyway, it's the economy, stupid. Like, we've been knowing this. It shouldn't be that difficult. Kevin says, Anna, love the necklace. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Titan says, man, I just left the mall and I swear the shops in the middle of the mall are like in real life ad pop-ups and they're aggressive. I wish that was the extent of serious problems in this country. Same. Brian writes in and says, what's Trump planning to do with the American homeless? With the big beautiful bill, deport them? I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
I'm humping this thing like a young dog on old furniture.
Yuger writes in our member section and says, re-education camps like those in the socialist/communist countries that they're like complaining about all the time. I know. Anyway, let's move on. Hopefully that segment was able to talk some sense into some people. And Twisty Fox, thank you for your comment. Anna is great. Is she solo tonight? Only for the first hour. Cenk Uygur will be joining me for the second hour and the bonus episode, so stick around for that as well. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about updates on a possible ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Don't get too excited, though.
What are you going to talk to Netanyahu about next Monday?
Well, he's coming here. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about the great success we had. I mean, we had an incredible, in Iran, we had an incredible success. It was a great, brilliant strike and how to go forward. We're also going to talk about Gaza. We want to get the rest. We got a lot of hostages back, but we're going to talk about Gaza.
Well, ahead of yet another meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Donald Trump announced that he has helped broker a new agreement for a ceasefire, a 60-day ceasefire, which is just a pause in a genocide. And he claims that Israel has agreed to this ceasefire. But have they? Because right now, I think that your expectations should be tempered if you're excited about a ceasefire being agreed upon. Now, on Truth Social yesterday, Trump posted the following. My representatives had a long and productive meeting with the Israelis today on Gaza. Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions to finalize the 60-day ceasefire, during which time we will work with all parties to end the war. The Qataris and Egyptians, who have worked very hard to help bring peace, will deliver this final proposal. I hope, for the good of the Middle East, that Hamas takes this deal because it will not get better. It will only get worse. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, how could it get any worse than every single building being bombed, every single hospital being completely and utterly destroyed, tens of thousands of innocent civilians being killed? I mean, how does it get worse than luring innocent, starving Palestinians to humanitarian aid hubs only to shoot and kill them as they try to get their hands on some food to feed themselves and their families? How does it get worse than that? I mean, when it comes to the Israelis and the Israeli government, I totally believe that it can get worse. So I'll just take Trump's word for it. But nonetheless, this idea that Israel has agreed to a ceasefire is false, okay? So administration sources said that the deal was finalized after months of behind the scenes efforts led by a special envoy, Steve Witkoff, of course. But as usual, it seems that Trump has gotten out over his skis. So despite his statement, an Israeli source This is reported by CNN. An Israeli source familiar with the matter said Israel had not approved the new proposal, which revolves around timetables and guarantees for ending the war, the critical sticking points in previous negotiations. So I'm just gonna pause for a second so we can get caught up on all the context, because this has been the situation since the Biden administration. Netanyahu does not want to end the war. And I really get mad at myself every time I call it a war, because how can you even call it a war? They're just annihilating Gaza. Hamas doesn't have, it's not a country with a military, with the kind of military capability that Israel has. The people of Gaza are trapped in that region, in that strip of land. They're just completely being annihilated. It's a genocide, so let's be clear about that. He doesn't want to end the genocide, okay? He knows that the second he does, he's not gonna have an excuse anymore. He has to go testify in his corruption trials. He doesn't want to do that. I think part of the reason why Trump is trying to get the corruption charges against Netanyahu dropped is so he'll finally agree to a ceasefire. How pathetic is that? And by the way, who's the leader here? I thought Donald Trump was like this alpha. I thought he had some pride. I thought he wasn't willing to get dog walked like other previous presidents have been by Israel. I mean, Biden was just totally embarrassed, humiliated on a regular basis by Benjamin Netanyahu, but Trump's allowing the same thing to happen. They don't want an end to the war, okay? And the sticking point isn't Hamas. The sticking point has always been Israel. So I really do take issue with the way that he framed this whole negotiation process in his Truth Social post. Nonetheless, in other words, Israel does not want to end the genocide in Gaza, and a source told CNN that this new version of a ceasefire agreement attempted to take into account Hamas's concerns with the earlier proposal. During the ceasefire, Israeli hostages would be released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, the source added, who, by the way, are also hostages when you consider the fact that most of them haven't been charged with a crime. They never get to see a judge or undergo a trial. They're just sitting in these Israeli prisons with no charges and no end in sight. So sure, I guess you can call them prisoners, but I like to reserve that word specifically for individuals who are accused of committing an actual crime. Anyway, of the 50 hostages who are still in Gaza, at least 20 of them are believed to still be alive. And as part of the latest proposal, humanitarian aid would once again flow through UN-run channels rather than this just absolutely horrific US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation. These are the humanitarian aid hubs in which Israeli soldiers open fire and shoot and kill desperate Palestinians who are trying to get their hands on some food. And more than 500 Palestinians have been killed while seeking aid since the GHF started operating in late May. Now, Netanyahu is apparently planning to convene his full cabinet on Saturday night to discuss this proposal. I'm sure that it'll be a good faith effort. Hamas, which has been pushing for a permanent ceasefire as opposed to a 60-day pause, has not agreed to the deal either. The group said it was studying the new ceasefire offer received from mediators in Egypt and Qatar. Now, Hamas official Taher al-Nunu said that the militant group was ready and serious regarding reaching an agreement. He said Hamas was ready to accept any initiative that clearly leads to the complete end to the war. They've been saying the same thing for a while now, dating all the way back to the Biden administration. But again, Israel won't agree to that because they don't want an end to the war. Now, a senior Hamas official said in late May that the group is ready to return the hostages in one day. Just we want a guarantee that the war will not, that war will not come again after that. So again, they don't want a temporary pause in fighting. They want this war to end. And I think that that's actually the best option for all parties involved. But a Hamas delegation is expected to meet with Egypt and Qatari mediators in Cairo on Wednesday to discuss the proposal. Trump, meanwhile, is scheduled to meet on Monday with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he told reporters yesterday that he would be very firm in his discussions with Netanyahu, claiming that Bibi wanted to end the war. I don't think so. But here's what Trump said, quote, he wants to, meaning he wants to end the war. I can tell you he wants to. I think we'll have a deal next week. But in his first public remarks since Trump's announcement of this alleged ceasefire deal, Netanyahu made no indication that he intends to accept.
אני מודיע לכם, לא יהיה חמאס, לא יהיה חמאסטן, לא חוזרים לזה, הדבר הזה נגמר. אנחנו נשחרר את כל חטופינו ואנחנו נכריע את החמאס, לא יהיה.
So it's unclear yet whether anything will come of Trump's announcement. It really is reminiscent of all of the, we're so close to a ceasefire deal reports that we were getting during Biden's administration. At this point, neither side has said that they're compromising on previous demands. So we're right back at square one. There is no indication that anything has changed or that we're anywhere near a ceasefire next week. The only slight indication, though, of some movement toward an end to this war is that a Qatari foreign ministry spokesman told CNN the Israel-Iran agreement had created momentum for the latest talks between Israel and Hamas. But that's it. The suffering people of Gaza desperately hope the deal comes to fruition. Adnan al-Assar, a resident of Khan Yunis, says of Trump, quote, we hope he is serious like he was serious during the Israeli-Iranian war when he said the war should stop, and it stopped. But some Gazans, not so hopeful.
This is not the first time he has said this. Since the beginning of the war, they've been promising us something like this. Release the hostages and we will stop the war. Every time they say the war is ending, they kill us, the death toll rises, and we lose more of our loved ones. If they wanted to end the war, it would have ended a long time ago. This war will not end, but it is a war that will end us.
Sadly, I think he's right. So as much as I want to feel a level of excitement or maybe a little bit of hope that there will be a ceasefire next week, I definitely wouldn't put money on it. I don't think it's gonna happen. That's where my bet is, and it pains me to say that. The war needs to come to an end. It's not a war, it's a genocide. Innocent people are dying. We as Americans are using up our resources to aid and abet this genocide in Gaza. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. And it won't stop unless Trump is willing to be as harsh toward the Israeli government as he is toward, Hamas or any other party when it comes to these types of agreements. Treating Israel favorably has not worked out well in getting this war to end. So we'll see what happens. But again, I don't have much hope that there will be a ceasefire next week. All right, let's talk about interest rates. Fun topic, although Trump is having a tough go at things lately.
You were criticizing the Federal Reserve Chair before coming to this summit.
Yeah, I think he's terrible.
I was wondering if you've begun interviewing different candidates for the Fed pick.
Yeah, I know within 3 or 4 people who are going to pick. I mean, he goes out pretty soon, fortunately, because I think he's terrible. He's an average mentally person. I'd say low in terms of what he does, low IQ for what he does, okay?
President Donald Trump is absolutely furious with Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who has essentially defended his decision to hold off on lowering interest rates due to uncertainty stemming from the president's tariffs and trade policy. Now, tariffs, of course, are essentially taxes on imports to the United States. And those costs are transferred over to US consumers, meaning it adds inflationary pressure to the market. And as a result of that, and over concerns that that will happen, Jerome Powell has decided, okay, we're just not going to stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates further. We want to wait and see. That is his strategy here, and Trump is not happy about it. And you're about to hear why.
Instead of paying $900 billion, we don't want to pay 900 just because he doesn't want to lower the rate. I said, if there's inflation in 2 years or 3 years or 1 year from now, you raise the rate, you take care of the inflation, among other things. But he's
Probably a very political guy, I guess. I don't know. I think he's a very stupid person, actually.
The $900 billion that Trump was referencing there is the $900 billion that the United States spent last year in servicing our debt. So we have $37 trillion in federal debt. And when interest rates are higher, obviously that debt becomes more expensive. He wants interest rates to go down so our debt is a little less expensive. Servicing our debt won't cost as much. But it is a little bit of a problem, right? That this so-called big beautiful bill adds another $4 to $5 trillion to the federal debt. That's what he's thinking about. That's what he's worried about. And rather than do the right thing in, maybe reining in these goodies that billionaires are going to be getting as a result of that big beautiful bill, Trump has decided to direct his ire toward Jerome Powell, who's worried about overstimulating the market at a time when Trump's trade policies could lead to higher inflation. That's what's going on here. Now, about a week ago, Powell made clear that the Federal Reserve has decided to wait and see what type of inflationary pressure Trump's trade policies will have on the US economy. Take a look.
For the time being, we are well positioned to wait to learn more about the likely course of the economy before considering any adjustments to our policy stance.
Are we in a position where it would be appropriate to do something as big as a 0.5% cut again?
Well, look, as I said earlier, if you just look at the basic data and don't look at the forecast, you would say that we would have continued cutting. The difference, of course, is at this time, all forecasters are expecting pretty soon that some significant inflation will show up from tariffs. Now, and we can't just ignore that. But we're not. We're just saying let's wait and see more. That's all we're doing.
And that has absolutely infuriated Trump. So Trump's ever-changing tariff agenda has caused months of deep uncertainty for global markets and businesses, as NBC News reports. Many have struggled to make predictions and plan ahead for duties that have shifted, sometimes with no warning other than social media posts by the president. So it's not just that Trump is threatening these massive tariffs on goods that are being imported from our trade partners. It's that he goes back and forth, he wavers. You don't know what he's actually going to land on in terms of his trade policies. And so that uncertainty, of course, is making the Federal Reserve a little uneasy, and they want to wait and see what happens. Now, Powell shared that sentiment on Tuesday this week when Bloomberg News anchor Francine Lacqua asked point blank if the Fed would have cut interest rates or cut interest rates more, because they have actually cut interest rates a little bit. But if they would cut interest rates even more if it weren't for Trump's trade policies. Let's take a look at how he answered.
Chair, would the Fed have cut more by now if it weren't for the tariffs?
So I think that's right. In effect, we went on hold when we saw the size of the tariffs and essentially all inflation forecasts for the United States went up materially as a consequence of the tariffs.
Now, President Trump responded, honestly, how you would expect him to.
We're doing well, and as a country, if the Fed would ever lower rates, would buy debt for a lot less. It's a shame. This guy, do you ever have a guy that's not a smart person and you're dealing with him and you have to deal? He's not a smart guy. A stupid person, frankly, at the Fed.
The only thing is we have a Fed chairman that is, he doesn't get it. I'd love him to resign if he wanted to. He's done a lousy job.
The president sent a letter to Jerome Powell, essentially calling on him to once again lower interest rates to what he said should be 1%. And he sent this handwritten letter on top of what was essentially a printout of world central bank rates from around the world. And he notes on this letter that you can see on your screen that there are 34 central banks around the world that have lower interest rates than the United States.
Yeah, Yeah, no, that's true. Other countries do have lower interest rates. Their central banks have implemented lower interest rates than the interest rates we have here in the United States. That is absolutely true. You know what's also absolutely true? And this is something that Trump, who's calling Jerome Powell stupid, should probably take note of. Those other countries haven't slapped massive tariffs on imported goods that would lead to inflation for their consumers. So there's a puzzle piece there that Trump isn't addressing at all. He's treating all of these countries as if they're all being led by the same person who's implementing the same policies, but that is not the case. And look, the leaders of those countries, again, they have different policies. I don't know what the policies are for every single one of those countries that have lower interest rates than we do. But I think with Jerome Powell, I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm not a huge fan of Jerome Powell. But I actually do want to commend him for wanting to remain independent, not caving to pressure from President Trump, and continuing in the path that he thinks is appropriate given the uncertainty that's been brought upon us as a result of Trump's wavering trade policies. And look, if you're wondering, okay, well, how are those trade negotiations going? I kind of want to give you a little update. I know there's been a lot going on in the news. People haven't been paying close attention to these trade negotiations that Trump would have you believe are going really well, but they're not going really well. Okay, so let me just give you two examples, beginning with Vietnam. Those negotiations have concluded with Trump announcing Vietnam trade deal, 20% tariff on its imports to the United States. You're gonna pay for that. You, the American consumer, are going to pay for that. There's more. Vietnam also agreed that goods would be hit with a 40% tariff rate if they originated in another country and were transferred to Vietnam for final shipment to the United States. So what are American consumers gonna get out of that exactly? Kind of hard to understand. We're gonna pay more for goods that are produced in Vietnam. We're not manufacturing those goods here in the United States. Doesn't look good. If that's the art of the deal, I don't know. If that's considered a good deal, maybe I want some bad deals because that's awful, but there's more. Another big trade partner of ours is Japan, of course, and things are looking pretty bleak because Japan's like, yeah, no, we're not gonna cave to your demands. After failing to cut a trade deal with Japan following weeks of talks, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and US Trade Representative Jameson Greer decided to turn up the pressure. Ooh, okay. The Americans said they might demand a cap on the number of vehicles Japan could export to the US, a policy known as a voluntary export restriction. Well, I'm sure Japanese officials were like, oh my God, we better give the US everything they want. But the Japanese officials stood their ground. From the start, they had told the Americans they wouldn't agree to any deal that preserves Trump's 25% automotive tariff, according to people familiar with the conversations. On Monday, Trump appeared to cut off talks with Tokyo. Art of the deal. So here's a good way to sum up how things are going with these trade negotiations. Administration officials attempting to negotiate multiple deals have at times contradicted one another about goals and timelines, and Trump has further muddied the picture. The chaotic situation has left Japan and other countries bewildered, unsure of what the White House wants or when they have to deliver a deal. And by the way, just to reiterate something that I've been saying repeatedly while covering Trump's trade policies, I am not necessarily against tariffs. I actually think free trade has been pretty disastrous for sectors of the American economy. I am open to tariffs. This though is chaos, it's nonsense, and rather than maybe do a little bit of self-reflection and pivot to a better policy, Trump is deciding to lash out at Jerome Powell for not being his little puppet who just lowers interest rates on demand. By the way, Federal Reserve, of course, is supposed to be an independent body. It's not supposed to be influenced by Congress or the executive branch. It is supposed to act independently. Now, Powell has repeatedly defended the central bank's independence, by the way, and I should note that the Supreme Court bolstered the Fed's independence in a ruling just last month. So Powell is defending the decision to hold interest rates steady, saying on Tuesday of this week that as long as the US economy is in solid shape, the prudent thing to do is to wait and learn more and see what the effect might be. We haven't seen effects much from tariffs, and we didn't expect to by now. We have always said the timing, amount, and persistence would be highly uncertain. And asked about the impact of Trump's insult-laden criticism, here's what Powell said, quote, "I'm very focused on just doing my job." He said the only two things that matter to him and fellow rate-setting officials are full employment and price stability, the two sides of the Fed's so-called dual mandate. The ECB conference attendees applauded his response. Now, Trump has also expanded his attacks. He's not just attacking Jerome Powell anymore. He's attacking the entire committee that sets interest rates, saying that its members should be ashamed of their monetary policy. Well, they're not. The board just sits there, he says, and watches. So they are equally to blame. We should be paying 1% interest or better. As for Powell's possible successor, look, he could remain as a board member all the way through January of 2028 if he chooses to. But his term as chair doesn't end soon. It ends in May of 2026. So he's got another 2 years. No, wait, 1 year. It's 25. So he's got another year at least serving as the chair if he chooses to remain in that position, refuses to resign. And it would be a wonderful act of defiance for him to serve his term and then decide what he does after that. But he shouldn't cave to Trump. Trump should, for once in his life, understand what you do sometimes has consequences. If you pursue a chaotic, ham-handed tariffs policy, there will be consequences. And he's experiencing it right now, but just refuses to accept it. Let's take our final break for the first hour. When we come back, I'll do one more story and then we'll bring Cenk in. Don't miss it, we'll be right back.
They dropped a load, the biggest load that we've seen.
Played quarters?
Smash it.
Rapid fire round of super chats, starting with Stinky Feet, who says bigot's gonna bigot and then claim they are not bigoted. That's in regard to various people referring to Zohran Mamdani as a jihadist or an extremist. My favorite is communist jihadist. Just put words together that sound scary to people. Scandinavian Alien Dragon says, if consumers have more money, then we spend more money. If corporations want to make money, then pay your workers more. You know, there's a distortion in the market though, and that distortion comes in the form of corporate stock buybacks. So I totally agree with you. I think the best economy is one in which the working class is robust, they have disposable income, they're able to go out there and spend. But that's not the priority for our lawmakers. Michael Catalano says, what are the odds Trump uses any protest of Netanyahu as an excuse to enact even more of his draconian authoritarian wish list? I'm not really sure. Look, Trump does what Trump wants. I think that's become very clear. I mean, the only thing that has been able to stop Trump so far are the courts. Congress has been utterly useless. The Democrats are so useless, okay? And by the way, again, I don't mean the voters. I'm never, ever, ever talking about the voters. My heart goes out to American voters, regardless of who they vote for, to be honest with you. Because what options do we have? Okay, look at the Democratic Party right now. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries did this like pathetic like photo op with like a baseball bat. He's like, oh, I'm gonna take a baseball bat to the big beautiful bill. Are you? Are you? Like, they're just completely useless. And I get that they don't have majorities in Congress, but they have the bully pulpit, and they've allowed Donald Trump to brand himself as a working class hero when he clearly isn't. The problem is Hakeem Jeffries isn't a good public speaker, which is strange considering the fact that had Democrats maintained a majority in the House, he'd be the Speaker of the House. Can we pick a speaker on the Democratic side that, is good at speaking? I don't know, but anyway. Sorry for that rant. In Guns We Trust, even if they get a ceasefire, Israel's gonna violate it. And it'll never be reported on by the mainstream media. It'll be reported on by us and Drop Site News, which has been doing a fantastic job covering everything that's been transpiring in Gaza and the West Bank. But I do take your point. They chip away at these people by demolishing a home here, killing a family there, expanding settlements. You're absolutely right. I mean, they're destroying homes in the West Bank as we speak. It's okay, well, welcome back to the show, everyone. We're gonna do it live. Kate, I love that story. We should produce it and do it on the show today. All right, and linens was a typo. All right, let's get to our next story.
One of the things, and there's a lot of arguments about Trump, that worries me very, very much is this movement toward authoritarianism and going after media, suing media, taking away the authority that Congress has.
When you say suing media, are you talking about the CBS lawsuit?
Among other things, he has.
Right, but don't you think there's a real issue with what they did?
No.
You don't think that there's a real issue in editing conversations to give someone an answer that's different than what they really answered?
Last month, Joe Rogan and Senator Bernie Sanders had a pretty long debate about President Donald Trump's lawsuit against Paramount. Now, Paramount just agreed to settle that lawsuit for $16 million. Technically, the lawsuit was about Kamala Harris's now infamous 60 Minutes interview. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you should be aware of. It looks like Paramount wanted to settle because they were hoping to get some cookies from Trump's FCC. We'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do, let's talk about the settlement itself, what it's stemming from, whether there was any credibility to it, and more. So, look, Trump sued CBS News specifically, which is owned by Paramount. Paramount is the parent company for CBS News. And this lawsuit was filed in October of last year. Now, his lawsuit came after CBS's 60 Minutes released two different versions of an answer then Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris gave to a question about Israel. Look, I think that both versions were bad. I think that she was terrible in most of these interviews. I'm just keeping it real. One of the versions, which was less edited, had more word salad involved. The more edited version was still bad, but it had less word salad involved. So with that in mind, you have essentially Donald Trump thinking or claiming that the more edited version, which actually aired on television, the television version of 60 Minutes, was edited specifically to give Kamala Harris an upper hand. Essentially, CBS put their thumb on the scale and tried to make Kamala Harris look better in order to help her defeat Donald Trump in the presidential race. That is his claim. So he files this lawsuit. The more edited or the less edited version was like a promo clip that was posted on social media. So both versions were out there. But nonetheless, Trump thought that there was something shady going on in order to hurt his chances of beating Kamala Harris. And as we all know, not only did he beat Kamala Harris, he won the popular vote. And these types of lawsuits, in my opinion, are super pathetic, petty, unnecessary. But the man loves lawsuits, so I'm not surprised that he's pursuing this. Now, CBS has opted to settle rather than fight this. And I should also know one other thing, and this is what I hate about broadcast news, television news. We're kind of in the same camp, even though, we're kind of in the same camp. You have time constraints. You have to go to break. You have hard outs. Okay, you don't have endless time like you would in a podcast to have these long form conversations. So things unfortunately need to get cut out. Videos do need to get edited down in order to ensure that you make, the time obligations and go to the obligated breaks for commercials. And so you should keep that in mind when it comes to television news, because again, it's different from what you would get online or through social media. Now, per the settlement, the money will go toward legal fees and Trump's future presidential library, but not to Trump directly. By the way, Trump's presidential library is gonna be like a palatial library from what it looks like. I mean, the guy is gonna get like a fancy plane from the Qataris for his library. He's gonna get a $16 million settlement from Paramount that's gonna go to his library. It's gonna be a dope library. Paramount will not be forced, by the way, to apologize for the edits, and I'm glad that that's the case because I don't think that they did anything wrong here. And Paramount also announced that they're not going to, that they are going to release full transcripts of 60 Minutes interviews with presidential candidates moving forward. And I think that's the right thing to do, and I'm glad that they're gonna do that. So if there's a silver lining, that would be it. I think it's important to release the full transcripts. Now, a spokesperson for Trump's legal team said the settlement is another win for the American people as he holds the fake news media accountable for their wrongdoing and deceit. Again, both versions of Kamala Harris's answer were not good. Okay, they didn't make her look good, but okay. Now, as we mentioned, there's another angle to this story. And I think this is the real reason why Paramount opted to settle as opposed to fight Trump in court over this. And I do think that if they fought Trump in court, they would have won. Now, Paramount has a pending merger with Skydance Media, and Trump's FCC would need to approve the merger in order for it to move forward. So it's an $8 billion merger, and it was announced in July of last year. That proposed merger, again, is currently under review by the FCC. So you can probably see how the settlement could look like a quid pro quo if the merger all of a sudden goes through. In fact, the Freedom of the Press Foundation, a Paramount shareholder, by the way, had already threatened to sue the company's board over a potential settlement, arguing that it would damage the institution's reputation and do harm to its journalists. Now, in recent months, both 60 Minutes executive producer Bill Owens and CBS News and station's chief executive Wendy McMahon resigned from their jobs, and they both opposed the settlement with Trump. They think that it's the wrong thing to do, and I can understand why that's the case. But Shari Redstone, who is Paramount's controlling shareholder, has been basically pushing for this settlement. The Washington Post reported in May, let's take a look. Paramount is seeking government approval to merge with another entertainment conglomerate, Skydance Media, and a settlement is seen internally as a way to ease that process. By the way, I do not agree with these conglomerates. I don't agree with the mergers. I think that the FCC should block this merger. But now that Paramount has agreed to a $16 million ridiculous settlement for Trump, it's very likely that the merger will go through. Edward Claris, a media attorney, told the Washington Post that these kinds of settlements could lead to a bit of a vicious cycle. You think? If you settle cases, you're going to send a message to your news team to not push the envelope for fear of people being sued. And you're going to court more cases against your company because they might think that if they sue, or if they sue you, they're going to collect. No, that's definitely true. That's absolutely true. I think that this is going to have a chilling effect on the way broadcast journalists do their jobs. I mean, think about it. Trump has sued a pollster for getting a poll wrong. He thinks that the pollster was trying to put her thumb on the scale by claiming that Kamala Harris was going to beat him in one of the battleground states. You have Trump now suing CNN for simply reporting on an app that informs Americans about where ICE is conducting operations so they can avoid those areas. CNN didn't promote it. CNN simply and merely reported on it. Now they're getting sued by Trump over that. But a note that I'd like to give to anyone who considers themselves a journalist, who's working in the field and might feel tempted to run for the hills or to play ball with Trump because they're afraid of a lawsuit. Journalism isn't supposed to be, and has never really been, a glamorous job. It is a difficult job. It's a job where you're supposed to attract the ire of people in positions of power. You're supposed to upset corrupt business owners who screw over the American people. Being a journalist sucks. Everyone hates you. You anger all sorts of powerful people. And if that's appealing to you, then you're meant to be a journalist. If that's unappealing to you and you're always running scared, well then maybe retire and find another profession to work in. Let the president sue you. Fight back, because the freedom of press is literally dependent on it. Otherwise, yeah, pack your bags, go home, do something else, work in any other field. But you shouldn't allow the president to have a chilling effect on journalism in a country that is supposed to value freedom of the press and freedom of speech. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, Cenk Uygur will be joining us for the second hour. Don't miss it.
Get out of politics and get another job.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by a, I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. You know, not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, you know, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taking apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you could hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team. David Sorrell.
Dr. Phil.
Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Cenk.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, you know, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, you know, they talk a
about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, good, what we're talking about it now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, that your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
Yes. Congratulations on all your success. You guys are everywhere.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about
This is
that.
a happy Anna Kasparian. What's up? You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
I'd be worried about getting my ass blown out, right? That is a weird way of saying it. Cenk, you're a natural born athlete. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk, you were my Michael Schur, I was about to say, because that's the last show I did. I was old school with Michael.
I see you, Cenk.
Okay, well, Michael also shaved.
My dress isn't feminine enough for you today?
Well, we're going to talk about princess treatment a little bit later in the show. That's actually one of my favorite topics today. So I think you guys are going to love that story. Should people get princess treatment, or is it terrible for men, for women, etc.? What is it? We'll explain in a minute. And then, of course, we got attacks against Zohran Mamdani coming up in this hour. Of course. So what's new? And by the way, KN, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. They had that big, beautiful button below the video on YouTube, and you could join at tyt.com. Okay, so lots to get to. Casper, why don't we get started?
Let's get started with this.
He is rejecting what we have developed as Western civilization.
People say, well, he's just being himself. He's so authentic. Okay, if a third worlder comes and starts defecating on the side of the street in Times Square, are we going to say, boy, he's being his true and authentic self? He's really being wonderful. No, we have standards in the West.
He's just like, hey, let's put root beer in all the drinking fountains. Everything will be free. Look at how I eat my burrito with my fingers.
Oh my God,
We have standards in the West? Does Charlie Kirk not know that there are homegrown Americans defecating on the side of the street right now?
No, I gotta jump in. Because I originally came from Turkey when I was 8 years old, and Turkey is not a developing country. Well, you could make arguments, but it's a top 20 economy, okay? So
I love when your Turkish pride comes out.
Yeah, okay. But my point is, it's not America, it's not Germany, Japan, etc. Okay? No one would ever defecate in the streets, and it would be horrifying. Whereas in LA and New York and San Francisco, I've seen feces all over the streets, right around the corner from my house.
We have standards.
We would
here
never
in the
tolerate it in the West.
We have standards here in the West.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen human feces on the sidewalk more in any other country than America. Yeah. So, and my guess is Charlie Kirk would be opposed to that as well. But the idea that it doesn't happen here, but all those third worlders do it is hilarious.
Yeah.
But only matched by the hilarious comment by Chaffetz there on Fox News. He's like, next thing you know, he's gonna try to get us to eat burritos with our hands.
They're gonna make you drink Starbucks every single day until you die. Do you remember when Tucker said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, come on.
So look,
and then pizza and burgers and sandwiches and donuts, all of that with your hands. Can you believe they're gonna do that to Western culture?
So look, in what can only be described as giving Obama in a tan suit vibes. The latest culture war in America is about New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani eating rice with his hands. And now look, I'm just gonna say this. Number one, I prefer to eat rice with a fork, but I don't care about how Mamdani eats his rice. I don't care. I don't care if he eats it on a boat. I don't care if he eats it on a goat. Like, it doesn't matter to me. But it really, really matters to the right wing. So let's watch a video that kicked off all this outrage, and then we'll go to all of the crazy right wingers who are obsessed with this story.
Tell me, why is Palestine a part of your politics?
When you grow up as someone, especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle. It is one that is framed in terms of empathy and solidarity. Specifically growing up in South Africa post-apartheid, it felt as if one of the most natural things to wear around my body was a keffiyeh. And so then to get here and see all of a sudden this topic was not only one that was discussed very differently, but was entirely taboo. It was a shock to my system. And for me, what made it central to my identity is that it is a glaring contradiction. We say we care about freedom and justice and self-determination, and yet for some reason we draw a line when it comes to Palestinians that accept them.
So none of the right wingers that we're about to talk about addressed any of the substance in what Mamdani had to say there?
Of course not. How could they with those barbaric acts? That was a slightly different way of eating than me. Did you know that Chinese folks, a lot of them have soup for breakfast? What is wrong with them? I hate them.
I love soup for breakfast.
So what? Why would it possibly matter?
They also eat with sticks.
Yeah, they eat with sticks. What's wrong with them? The barbarians. Okay, so they eat slightly differently. What? Okay, no, but I can't stop going back to Chaffetz. I think that guy's hilarious. Okay, normally we eat burritos with a fork and knife here in America, and afterwards we have tea and crumpets. But this barbarian would have us just pick up the burrito with our bare hands.
Look,
and in New York of all places, I've never seen anyone eat with their bare hands in New York. Literally bagels, pizza, everything in New York you eat with your bare hands. But okay.
Okay, we also live in America that's about to celebrate the 4th of July. Can't wait, excited. One of the big items that people like to consume on the 4th of July, hot dogs.
It's my favorite meat.
Well, some of those hot dogs, once you find out what's in the hot dogs, you're not gonna find it so appetizing. Maybe you would prefer to eat the rice with your hands as opposed to eat the hot dogs.
Does Charlie eat the hot dog with a fork and knife? I do declare, yes.
Okay.
I have some condiments with it though.
Okay. So this story's hilarious. The ensuing culture war is, look, let's just go to the video. So here's Charlie Kirk explaining why he believes it's a signal of the third world coming to overtake New York. Let's watch.
We in the West value cleanliness. We have utensils. We teach our kids to use utensils. They say, well, what about burgers and pizza? Yeah, that food is designed that way. Rice, since we have utensils, you don't eat it because we're not in the third world with your hands. He's doing this to signal his third world cred. So think about it. To get credibility in the New York mayor's race, you have to pretend to be in the third world. People say, well, he's just being himself. He's so authentic. Okay, if a third worlder comes and starts defecating on the side of the street in Times Square, are we gonna say, boy, he's being his true and authentic self. He's really being wonderful. No, we have standards in the West. And in some of the comments of a TikTok video I made, people said, but Charlie, who are you to judge other cultures? No. That's the point. We in Western culture believe that our way of life is the best. We're better than Mohammedism.
I really want to do like brain scans of conservatives and just bring up random utensils, right? Because they do seem obsessed with utensils. Like you have Jesse Waters doing multiple segments about how men should never use straws or eat soup
in public.
In public,
like in in the shame of your private home, you could have soup, right? And he said French onion soup, especially with the cheese and stuff, so gay, right? But in your basement, you could like, oh my God, I'm so bi, right? And just go nuts, okay?
Oh my God. I just want to, I needed some comedic relief, so I really do want to thank all the various conservatives who are flipping out in this story. It's so good.
It's just a couple of things on what Charlie just said there. Okay, so number one, no, but burgers and pizza, they're designed to eat with your hands.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what Lord Burger decided back in the day in Hamburg or wherever. He was like, you know what, I'm going to design this to eat with your hands, unlike rice, okay? So rice, by the way, what is it designed to be eaten with? Because Chinese eat it with chopsticks.
They do.
And they think that we're crazy for eating it with a fork. They think it's totally inefficient.
They're wrong.
Okay, so, and then I just had rice upstairs. You know how I ate it? No, I ate it with a spoon. Because actually it's easier to pick up with a spoon. Am I a third worlder, or am I above the first world? Because a spoon is more efficient than a fork. Okay, come on, come on.
I think this
really,
is more
guys?
important. I think this is more important than housing or healthcare. I'm glad we're finally adjudicating this topic.
Yeah, and so look, friends of mine growing up who were Indian, sometimes, especially when they were with their parents, etc., would eat with their hands, and they were trying to be culturally sensitive to their background, right? And to the elders of their family, etc. Did they eat that way when we were out at Denny's? No, right? But I never, even though I didn't experience anyone eating with their hands growing up until I saw my friends doing it, my head didn't explode. I instantly understood, oh, that's a slightly different culture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And in different cultures, they eat in ways that we're not as familiar with. And then that was followed with a giant, so what?
Yeah, and then you moved on with your life, and that was it. So Congressman Brandon Gill says civilized people in America don't eat like this. If you refuse to adopt Western customs, go back to the third world. Look, I would agree with a statement like that if we're talking about honor killings or something, but that's not what we're talking about. We're literally talking about a guy who decided to eat rice with his hands. Doesn't mean I have to eat rice with my hands, doesn't mean Cenk does, doesn't mean anyone does.
Yeah, so that's now we're onto a serious topic and an important and interesting topic, because nobody ever makes this distinction and it drives me crazy. The difference between people of a certain background, like all Muslims, all Indians, all anything, right? Versus culture. And so I believe that you can comment on culture, you can criticize culture.
Absolutely.
And so but a lot of folks and I don't mean this in any of the recent ways, but some folks trying to be extra sensitive on the left say, no, you can't judge cultures like that. It's all relative.
I do it all the time.
No, it's relative when it's things that are like a matter of habit, tradition, etc., that don't hurt anyone else, that are irrelevant, etc., right? What kind of outfit you wear? Why do I care? I mean, go nuts, right?
I care a little bit.
I mean, look, so the Orthodox Jewish folks who wear the giant Russian outfits on Miami Beach, like this 1800 winter coat. I mean, he's drenched in sweat. He makes me look like I'm dry, okay? So I don't get it, and I think it's kind of funny, but so what? That brother likes that outfit, let him sweat his ass off. Who cares? Okay, but my point is, to your point, Anna, is that there are different cultural things that are outside of bounds. And so, for example, this is such an obvious and easy one. So we covered a story many years ago on TYT about Central Asian republics and how there was a very old tradition because of the Central Asian steppes. They were basically herders. This is also true in Scotland back in the day. And so it would lead to a lot of tribal warfare because it's easier to steal sheep than it is to steal land and then farm it, right? So it leads to a culture that is does more raids, etc. So now the part back to Central Asian Republic, they used to do raids and steal the other tribes' women.
Right.
So there's still a tradition that's almost gone now, and hopefully soon it will be gone. But one or two guys still do it once a decade or something, where they go and grab some poor woman and then they sexually assault her. And then the parents of the woman come by and convince the woman to marry the guy.
Yeah, and it has to do with, look, this stuff really does gross me out. I do negatively judge, cultures that put this like super high value on virginity. But it's about virginity, right? After she's been assaulted, basically,
raped. Yeah, let's keep it real. So what
she's no longer pure and she has no choice but to marry.
It's slightly worse than that. All of that is true. Plus, they think she had value before. We could get a dowry, etc. She now has no value.
I hate all of this stuff.
Okay, so
it disgusts me. So like, if we're talking about something like that, have at it, Haas, as Jake would say.
Exactly.
I don't mind judging that, but like, you guys don't have. Do conservatives or right wingers who hate Mamdani have any substantive, critique?
Yeah.
They don't talk about his policies, nothing.
So whereas actually there's a lot to talk about his economic policies, tons and tons, and some do, to be fair, right? But okay, so now guys, the reason I gave you that example is so you can see that rational people make rational distinctions, right? Things that are important and things that are not at all important. And this is another huge thing. If you then said, okay, everybody that's from Central Asia Republic, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, whatever, they're all rapists and they're all, no, that's not true. It's a tiny, tiny leftover part of the culture. Was it part of the culture hundreds of years ago? Yes. Does it mean that it should stay in your culture? No. Is it okay to say, hey, some parts of culture, of any culture, are so wrong from our perspective that no, here we have laws that say you can't do that. Of course. But does that involve eating, but the boundary line is pizza and rice and what you eat with your hands? Of course not.
Right.
And they try to make it seem like the foreigners are all like terrible and dirty and they defecate in the streets and they're all the same way and we got to keep them all out.
I know, but doesn't Ron DeSantis like to eat chocolate pudding with his hands?
Oh yeah, I mean, but that's why we're sending him back.
Where are we gonna send?
No, we're sending him back. Okay.
I got to show you one more video though. So we read a tweet or a post on X from Congressman Brandon Gill. Well, you're about to hear him and Will Cain talk about this very important matter in the next clip.
Just for the record, people have pointed out to you, pizza, burgers, hot dogs, eat with their fingers. But I don't think you can separate Mamdani's performance and what he's saying from the way he is projecting himself eating rice with his fingers. He is rejecting what we have developed as Western civilization.
And he puts these videos out online of him eating rice with his hands, which by the way is not something that Americans do. That is third world behavior. And that is connected to his policies. The goal here is to undermine Western civilization, to fetishize the third world, which is what he's doing in that video, to look other, to look unique, to look interesting, so that he can then push in these policies. The next step after that is he's gonna make another video in a couple of years, but instead of having a bowl of rice, it's gonna be an empty bowl, because that's where his policies are gonna get us.
It's not a rejection of a multicultural society unless the point of your cultural mores is to openly reject the place in which you have immigrated.
He's just eating rice with his hands.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it is.
But
There's nothing more to it than that.
No, I'll give him one thing that I found to be interesting about that video, not their commentary, is that I thought, that's interesting. He knows he's being taped and he's doing it anyway. I think what he was saying by doing that, because he's a super smart guy. It's not like he missed what he was doing,
yeah,
right?
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I think that what he was saying is, yeah, I'm not embarrassed of my culture. You want me to be embarrassed of my traditions and my heritage, but I refuse. I'm not embarrassed by it, and I belong here just as much as you do, even if you're not used to folks eating this way. And I think that's kind of strong. And because if he ever gets to a situation where he might be in a position to get power, I think he's smart enough to know that this would have happened.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what, Cenk? I think there's a grain of truth to what you're saying.
Oh, I got it. I got the rice reference. I'm gonna tell you the one thing I'm surprised they're not going after. But first, also, I can't let this one slide either. Charlie Kirk with the Mohammedism. What is that? Like, why don't you just say Islam, right? It reminds me of like the old school, like the Klan. They'd call them like Mohammedans. Okay, like we're going old school, right? I always thought like I'm not like, and Musliman. Which kind of sounds like Muslim. So you see, I'm not like deeply offended by these goofballs, right? But like, it is like, if you think Mamdani eating with his fingers is purposeful in whichever direction, certainly Charlie Kirk saying Mohammedism,
of course,
is also purposeful
to
make it seem like, oh, so weird and scary and dangerous.
He wants
Mohammedism. Yeah.
Whatever. Keep doing you, Booze, because I am entertained.
Yeah.
And I need to laugh, so that was great.
And so the thing that I'm surprised they're not going after is something that's a little bit true, which is he has way too many rings.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Okay, so
I know, Cenk, but
okay, I'm kidding around.
You're a bit of a grandpa. Okay?
Exactly, right? So for me, I'm unk, right? I'm old school, so I'm not gonna wear 8 different rings, right? But he's from the new school, and they wear a lot of rings.
They do wear a lot of rings.
So who cares? Wear 12 rings. What do I care, right?
Seems like you care a little bit. At least.
But my point is that I'm surprised they didn't pick up on it yet. That's going to be round 2. And they're like, what is going on with these rings? They're trying to do, I don't know, fill in the blank, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I will say this. It is unusual to eat rice with your hands, right? And we don't do that in America, but some cultures do. And among the various cultural, traditions that various cultures have in this country, that is like the least offensive to me, right? Because I don't care. No one's forcing me to eat with my hands. Who cares? Like, it's nonsense.
And when
Obama's tan suit, literally, it's the same type of nonsense.
And when you make a big deal out of it, you betray yourself. Right? Because everybody knows it's not a big deal. And so when you pretend that it is, what you're trying to do is go, ha, foreigner. Totally. And everybody knows it.
Totally. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more stories for you, including, Kristi Noem with a fascinating allegation that's unfounded. So we'll tell you what that is and more when we come back.
Anti-Semitism.
Sexual anarchy.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to Super Chat. In Guns We Trust wrote in, hands were designed biologically for us to eat and grasp things with, and arms are this length so we can reach our mouths, unlike T-Rex dinosaurs. They're mad at him for using the tools God gave us. Now, I would argue evolution gave us for logical reasons, but exactly, right? Like we weren't supposed to eat with our toes. Or our eyelashes, we were in the beginning supposed to eat with our hands, yes. Spicy Trans Cupcake writes in, what does Charlie Kirk think about eating pudding with your fingers? So that's the point that Anna made, and No 1775 Jim and others also made it too, and you guys are of course absolutely right.
I can't remember if DeSantis actually ate pudding with his fingers or if it was just like a smear.
No, it was actual.
Oh,
yeah.
It's
so JD Vance never had sex with his couch. That was made up. Okay, but DeSantis did eat it with his fingers.
Why is DeSantis rejecting Western culture?
And like,
I can't believe it.
Because it's not a cultural thing for DeSantis. That's why it's weirder. You see what I'm saying?
It is. Yeah.
It's not like Italians in Florida are like, oh yeah, pudding. Like I've never seen that, right? Maybe they go like, oh, but give me some mutz with that, and they use a fork and a spoon to wrap. That's fun. That's fun. I can't wait for Charlie Kirk and others to be like, who uses a spoon and a fork to twirl the spaghetti? That's outrageous. Okay. Anyways, Titan writes in, will mainstream media ever wake up? Alex Thompson was so defensive when you guys called out mainstream media in that interview. He was all like, oh, I'm mainstream media.
I disagree with you. I think Cenk was very hostile for no reason.
No, I was hostile, but for very good reason. But
he's like one of the guys who actually did the right thing.
Yeah, but no, I'll tell you why I did that. It's a good conversation. So real quick, guys, I almost want him to be a messenger and take him back to the other mainstream media people, right? Because the other guys won't even come on. Like Jay Tapper obviously didn't come on because he's afraid of us, right? And he's worried, et cetera, et cetera. So I texted with him afterwards with Alex Thompson, because what I want him to understand is we're all in our different bubbles and we don't understand each other at all. So those mainstream media guys, they think they're nailing it. They think that they're like nearly perfect. So that when we do our critique of them, they're bewildered by it. And you think like, no way. And I try to explain to Alex, like a lot of people on the left and right think that mainstream media guys are evil, and they gotta know that they're manipulating people and telling people that politicians are honest and the money doesn't affect them and all this garbage that they say, right? And I try to explain to you guys, no, they're not evil. They genuinely believe that the money doesn't affect the politicians. It's not relevant in legislation, et cetera. And I know you think like they can't possibly believe that. No, the bubbles are super thick. They do believe that. That's why I'm trying to send a messenger back and tell them, guys, folks over here think you're evil because it's so obvious that you're not stating things that are true. Anyway.
Bread pudding. Oh, bloody love bread pudding. Oh, can smell it. And I thought I could go all fantastic Mr. Fox on that.
Back on TYT, checking out with you guys, and Annette Adams as well. Annette, you're awesome for hitting that big, beautiful button below the video on YouTube. TYT.com/join. Get a couple months off of annual membership. All right, Casper.
Things are popping off over at the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, I don't know what you think of the new administration. Certainly there are things that I like about and some of their pro-tech posture and things like that. But what's happening now is it's kind of disappointing.
It's insane.
Yeah.
We were told there would be there's two things that are insane.
Joe Rogan had some pretty harsh words for the Trump administration on the latest episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, which was just released. Now, you just heard him say that he had two things happening in the Trump administration that he finds insane. Well, he got through one of them, and then the conversation went off in a different direction before he could say the other. But here's the one that he didn't get to, or did get to.
One is the targeting of migrant workers, not cartel members, not gang members, not drug dealers, just construction workers. Showing up in construction sites and raiding them, gardeners.
Yeah.
Like, really?
I mean, he's absolutely right about that. In fact, if you look at the breakdown of the numbers of various people who have been detained by ICE, especially in recent months, the majority of them have not committed any crime. They've never been convicted of any crime. They might be in the country and they're undocumented, but the way that the Trump administration talks about these people makes it appear as though they've committed all sorts of violent, dangerous crimes, and that's just not the case.
So look, I think this is an important story for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is the second time that Rogan has said the same thing, right? And what a lot of us don't realize, because we all live in different bubbles, is that these independent shows, what sometimes people are calling the bro shows, I'm gonna try to call them independent podcasters from now on, or broadcasters.
Smart.
And so that independent media, the left was told that they're all right-wing, Trump-loving cultists, and the right probably thinks that they're exactly in the middle or something along those lines and have annoying left-wing opinions and stuff. So you have, as news people, our job is to relay to you what's actually happening in the world, right? And the reality is that most of those shows lean anywhere from a little right to a lot right, right? Some of them lean a little left, but not a lot, right? So Andrew Schultz, for example, voted for Trump, but is a lifelong Democrat. If you count Charlemagne and Breakfast Club, he's clearly a Democrat, right? But Rogan, Theo Von, et cetera, while they might have supported Trump, but you all know that Rogan supported Bernie earlier. What they're really supporting, guys, is outsiders and populists. So you can say, no, I don't like that, but Or you could say, I love that, but that is what's happening. And so that is why Rogan does disagree with Trump plenty of times. So like if you watch his show, you'll see things like this. And that's why I said this is the second time he said it. And the second reason why it's important is because those guys got to be successful by tapping into something that a lot of Americans agree with, right? And what they're doing is they're saying, and Rogan has clarified this on this issue. So look, I think what people voted for was close off the border and take out the criminals that are undocumented. It's like, that's gonna make you really popular, right? And so I think most of us agree with that. Maybe some folks on the left don't agree with that. But overall, yeah, that makes sense. And if you're in that position and you don't like it, but the majority of the country definitely agrees with that. But he says if you go in and start taking out construction workers and guys who are working in restaurants, etc., he's like, nobody's gonna like that. And he's right. And the polling indicates that people don't like that, right? So, and now I say that to the right-wing guys, because the right-wing guys think, no, everybody thinks like I do. So like,
they don't.
Yeah, and they think, oh my God, I love alligator Alcatraz. I love snatching up these undocumented wherever they live, right in front of their kids. Oh, I love that. The country loves it. No, the country doesn't love it. Rogan is right.
No, by the way, you just touched on something, because this whole immigration debate is so frustrating, because this is what's gonna happen. I can already see it, okay? The pendulum's just gonna keep swinging from one extreme to another, right? Democrat comes in, promises they're gonna let things get out of control at the border, just like Biden did, okay? That leads to some unsavory people getting in the country and doing bad things. Obviously, a tiny, minuscule portion of people who are in the country illegally, okay? And rather than address that as Democrats, rather than ensuring that you have a proposal, a plan to do something about those folks, they decide to create a vacuum in which Republicans and people like Trump come in and say, I'm gonna be the one who protects you, right? They're gonna focus on the very specific instances of terrible crimes being committed, and people are going to support them. But then Trump comes in and he starts targeting, people who should not be targeted. I'm sorry, you shouldn't be going after day laborers at Home Depot parking lots. You shouldn't be going after construction workers. You shouldn't be going after, women who work at these hotels to do upkeep and all that. Like, people don't like it, right? People thought that Trump's gonna come in and he's going to prioritize people who are actually a danger to society. But that is not what he did, because that's actually a lot harder to do. And there aren't a lot of people to mass deport that fall in that category. So we're in one right-wing extreme right now. The next will be a left-wing extreme, and the pendulum goes back and forth, back and forth. We can't have, God forbid, any common sense immigration policies. We can't reform immigration. We can't have a pathway to citizenship for people who've been in this country for literally decades. We're just gonna keep moving back and forth from one failed policy to another.
Yeah, look, there's another reason why these shows are important and them saying this. First, last thought on the immigration point is, look, this is exactly what we said on day one. Why? Because it's not only is it bad politics for Trump and the right wing, okay, good, drive down your poll numbers, but it's cruel. It's cruel, and American people don't like cruelty. I don't like cruelty. None of us here do, right? And so, like, ripping people up from a life they've lived for the last 10 years, 15 years, when they're trying to provide for their family, etc. The American people are just not as cruel as the radical right is.
They're not.
Okay, and I know, because in their bubble, they just can't get that. But the other important thing outside of immigration, as to why these shows are so important, is because they truly are independent. So like, they can get audience captured. I think Rogan for a while got guest captured, right? And so those are all things you got to look out for. Sponsor capture, all that stuff is legitimate, and there's algorithmic incentives, etc. We got to look out for all that. But having said that, it's so much better than the terrible old days where the entire right wing got their information from Fox News. And Fox News is a corporate-driven entity, and all they do is talking points. And in the old days, when I talked to Republicans, they were all robots. All said the same exact thing as Sean Hannity on every single issue. And it was depressing. Like, we'd lost half the country to they'd become zombified. So are some of them still zombified? Sure, of course, right? But a lot of them are now listening to these guys and Dylan and Rogan and Theo Vaughn and all these guys. And what they're getting is a whole smattering of different opinions, right? And Dave Smith, and some of them are pro-Israel, some of them are anti-Israel. A lot of them are really concerned about what Israel's doing, right? A lot of them say, hey, you know what, we want to close the border, but don't do this to immigrants. And so even if you disagree with them on a majority of the issues, at least they're not a conveyor belt of corporate talking points.
100%, I totally agree.
And that makes a giant difference.
Or more importantly, partisan talking points. Because the media it's like bifurcated now, where you're either left-wing media or right-wing media, and then you just cheerlead your tribe no matter what. And you're not really getting that with Rogan or Theo Vaughn, and that's a good independent media. You're getting less of that. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, you're getting way less of that, and you're seeing it every day with your eyes.
So we did have a poll question for our audience related to this story. The question is, what's the most insane part of the Trump administration so far? And then we give you 4 options: deportations, anti-Palestine crackdown, tariffs, or challenging the courts. And so far, deportations is ahead by a lot, 43%. Anti-Palestinian crackdown is at 14%. Tariffs is at 17%. And challenging the courts is at 26%.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I think I would vote challenging the courts, because that breaks down all rules and law and order, right? Then you have no rules to protect you on anything. But all are legitimate and all are terrible.
Really bad, yeah.
And last thing about the independent shows that I think are positive. Again, I probably disagree with at least 60% of what somebody like Rogan might say, maybe 70, maybe 80, right? But what I love is that this is totally accidental. Just the nature of these shows having different opinions is that it is forcing people to use independent judgment.
Yes, that's a good thing.
Right, instead of just going, okay, this is my right-wing ideology, this is my left-wing ideology, I'm never going to veer from it. Fox News told me never to veer from this, MSNBC told me to never veer from this, right? Now even if you like the independent shows, well, sometimes Andrew Schultz disagrees with Joe Rogan. So what are we gonna do? Yeah. We got to pick one, right? And so when you expand out even to the right-wing shows, Mark Levin and Tucker Carlson, they obviously disagree. So now you got to use your mind. Which one am I going to go with? Oh wait, I'm going to listen to their arguments. And we're at the beginning of people using their own minds. And then what it does is it also makes them research things. I wonder who's right.
Let's relax for a second. You're being a little too optimistic.
No, I'm not. No, guys, this is the beginning of that. And so it's not like I think, oh, it's over. Everybody's independent thinker now in America. We solved it. The country's saved. But the fact that it's headed in that direction, to me, is a great step forward.
All right, we're gonna see. For now, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what Kristi Noem is saying about some of the individuals who have been detained and more. Don't miss it.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to TYT.com members. Are we there yet? Says, you can see the devastation in Gaza on Google Earth. It's scorched earth. Israel's already bulldozing the evidence. Is that why Israel moves Palestinians? Just saying. So 2 quick things I want to mention about that. I was just on a show yesterday. I told you guys about counterpoints. And we'll put it up on tyt.com/press. The guy was an Israeli supporter that I was debating. So he had an alternate reality where Israel is a blooming democracy filled with hearts and rainbows and unicorns for Palestinians and the whole world, right? And they would never harm a butterfly in Gaza, but Hamas did everything terrible and they're the victims and et cetera, right? And I said to the audience at some point, look, you've heard 2 different alternate realities about what's happening in Gaza. Easy way to solve it. Just go and look up pictures and video of Gaza. And then you'll see who's right and who's wrong. Because Israelis really make it seem like what's happening in Gaza is totally normal. I mean, of course it's normal. You murder all the journalists, the human rights workers, you murder the children, a stadium full of children and women. It's normal. Oh, you guys are just anti-Semites, right? Then you look at pictures and videos of Gaza and you go, oh, not normal. Not at all normal. This is weirdo, crazed destruction and slaughter,
right? So that's why I like what you're saying. Just look up Gaza on Google Earth. You'll see the answer. S. Carmichael writes in the US, we eat French fries, barbecue wings, and ribs with our hands. How is eating rice with your hands more undignified than other things?
Sometimes those wings be saucy.
Yeah, no, the reason I read that is because we already gave plenty of examples, but I felt bad for not including the ones you said, because of course, ribs and wings. It's like we got the sauce all over our face and our hands.
Please, we're very sophisticated.
Oh, you third worlders are so uncivilized.
So
Here, give me another slab of ribs. Right? Come on. I love how smart our audience is. Great point. America Needs a Reboot says, what came first, the big beautiful join button or the big beautiful bill?
So beautiful.
I don't know.
Join button. Button came first.
Okay, look, there's only one way to find out. Hit the join button. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to argue with you.
You should hit it.
Yeah,
hit it good, real good.
Yeah, but it's a controversy that'll live on for the ages. Crafty Kether writes in on Twitch. Usually sub with Johnny Pie, but I do love me the old school power panel of Cenk and Anna.
You know, Johnny Pie, relatively new father. Got to give him a break. Dude's tired.
Yeah, no, Johnny Pie's awesome. I love that you sub with him normally. All right, Amber Jack 09 says, Cenk, have you ever tried to get on Joe Rogan's show or inviting him on here for an interview? I think you could explain things to him and his audience in ways that they aren't used to hearing. So good news. So you could check out Joe Rogan on the Young Turks from, God, that was a long time ago.
2014, I think it was.
Okay, so over a decade ago. I was on once. Were you on twice?
I was on twice. You guys want to know a funny story about me going on Rogan? I think he had requested me, or his producer at the time had requested me to go on the show, and I was like too afraid to go on his show because I heard bad things. And then I met Christian, who was a huge Rogan fan, and I wanted to impress him, so I reached back out and I was like, okay, I'll go on.
Oh my God, it's that old. Wow, that's interesting. So what happened with Rogan real quick is that he caught feelings because just because I threatened to fight him. What's the big deal, right? And then so he hasn't had me on since. But that one I get, at least, like as opposed to Bill Maher, who's like, oh, he likes Muslims. All right, so you got a message for John Idarola?
Tell him to be nice to me.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you, because I've got to read these two comments because they're too fun. I have to. Chris the Nomad says, Cenk has the best impressions. I had to read it.
Don't enable him.
Okay, of course you should. And Michael Catalano says, here's Cenk with the old Viking strategy of send one back alive to tell the others, LOL. That is kind of what I did with Alex Thompson. Okay.
Stop, Lucius, please stop.
All right, Casper.
All right, let's do it. Next story.
We are going after murderers and rapists and traffickers and drug dealers and getting them off the streets and getting them out of this country because Joe Biden let the worst of the worst come in here. The other day I was talking to some marshals that have been partnering with ICE. They said that they had detained a cannibal.
Did they?
That's what I was going to say.
Did they detain a cannibal? Because I know for a fact that what she said about the Trump administration and ICE specifically targeting rapists and criminals and really dangerous people is untrue. And I'm going to show you the receipts in just a moment. But did they detain a cannibal? I don't know. Why don't we hear more of what she has to say?
President Trump is upholding freedom by what he is doing. The freedom to live safely in this country and to do things legally and to have justice. And because those liberals, and I'm calling out you, CNN, I'm calling you out because you lie every single day about what these operations are. We are going after murderers and rapists and traffickers and drug dealers and getting them off the streets and getting them out of this country because Joe Biden let the worst of the worst come in here. The other day I was talking to some marshals that have been partnering with ICE. They said that they had detained a cannibal and put him on a plane to take him home. And while they had him in his seat, he started to eat himself. And they had to get him off and get him medical attention. These are the kind of deranged individuals that are on our streets in America that we're trying to target and get out of our country because they are so deranged they don't belong here.
He was eating himself, huh? Okay.
That's hell of a feat. Okay, how? How was he eating himself?
Okay, all right. So I don't believe her. What I do believe, though, is that this mad dash to detain and deport as many people as possible because Trump wants to engage in this like make-believe competition with the deporter-in-chief, Obama, is pathetic, and innocent people are getting caught up in this as a result. So I want to just quickly mention that there was an American citizen in Los Angeles who was detained by ICE, and the family is looking for answers. This is from CBS News. The family members of a US citizen who was taken into custody by federal agents in downtown Los Angeles on Tuesday are demanding answers as she was detained while on her way to work. She wasn't part of a protest, she wasn't doing anything wrong. Homegirl's on her way to work, American citizen, she gets snatched up by ICE. Andrea Velez, a Cal Poly Pomona grad working in merchandising at a shoe company, had just been dropped off by her mother and sister for the workday when they saw her being taken into custody, adding they had barely even driven a block before the arrest began. And that's just one example, okay? I don't believe anything coming out of this administration when it comes to their detention and deportation of undocumented people. Because again, it's so clear to me that everything they're doing is ham-handed. They don't care about due process. They're snatching up all sorts of people who haven't even done anything wrong.
Yeah, so I want to talk about how this affects businesses in a second too. But I mean, look, there's serious and lighthearted stuff here. The serious stuff, to get that out of the way for a second, is when you snatch up Latinos and Latinas or anyone else that are American citizens because your racist ass thinks, oh, they must be undocumented. It's impossible for all of the rest of us to not say F you.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so because like all these guys, oh my God, identity politics is so bad, and they're trying to put people above white people, etc. They get in power, they're like, oh, just grab all the Latinos and we'll figure them out later. No. So that's identity politics on steroids. On steroids,
definitely.
Right,
yep.
as bad as it gets. Well, I mean, I can't imagine anything worse in terms of identity politics. Okay, so, and cruelty is kind of the point here, and that's why they love bragging about it. And think about it, guys. Why is Kristi Noem the head of Homeland Security?
Because she's attractive.
Well, that's part of it.
Honestly.
Yeah, and she wanted to run for president. She's a rising star. Blah blah blah. But also because she shot a dog in a gravel pit. So the message is that's how mean we are. And the radical right loves that. They're like, yes, she's willing to shoot innocent dogs and puppies, right?
I don't know if that's
so. I don't even know if the radical right likes that. That's so mental that I'm not even sure the radical right likes that, right?
Everyone loves dogs.
But Stephen Miller.
Oh, Stephen Miller is subhuman, so I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, like, so there's some folks, but they picked her I think not despite that, but partly because of that, to say we have no bounds, okay? And so here she is. So now back to the lighter stuff, the no bounds also applies to facts and truth and logic and all those things. You found
No, Cenk. The Department of Homeland Security could not immediately provide corroborating details of any case to match Noem's story because it was made up.
Of course,
it was made up. Okay, and you know what else is made up? This idea that everyone who's being detained, or most people who are being detained and deported, are dangerous criminals, okay? So let's go back to the data, which we've shared with you before, but we'll share it again. As of June 14th, ICE had booked into detention 204,297 individuals. This is since October 1st of 2024, the start of the fiscal year 2025. Of those bookings, 65% or 133,687 individuals had no criminal convictions. Moreover, more than 93% of ICE bookings were never convicted of any violent offenses. About 9 in 10 had no convictions for violent or property offenses. So look, you might be in the camp of, I don't care if they've committed 0 violent crimes. They're here, they're undocumented, I want them out. I mean, I disagree with you, and honestly, if you were to get every single undocumented person out of the country, our country would literally collapse. Our economy would collapse, it would be a complete and utter disaster. I don't think people are fully aware of what they're asking for if they are in that camp. The other thing is, honestly, I do believe that America is the greatest country. I love this country. And you wanna know what I love about this country? The fact that it's a place where people from all over the world come together and they're proud to be Americans. Okay, they're proud to be part of this country. That's what makes this country so unique and so great. And this like obsession with like, oh no, what's the racial makeup? And we gotta make sure that there's more whites than any other. It's so utterly lame. Are we Americans? Are we ever going to move toward having a shared identity as Americans?
Yeah, it's called the United States of America, right? So if you wanted just white people, there's actually some countries that are largely white. But that's not America. America's always had Latinos. America's always had African Americans, obviously from early, well before the formation of the country. Technically, we've always had Asians in the country because we're United States of America, right? And we're the ones who came up with the idea, I mean, roughly speaking, and we were before the French Revolution, of equality. That no matter what race or religion you are, you're equal here. But that's the beauty of America. That's not the downside of America. That's the upside of America. So look, back to the crime issue. So natural born citizens actually commit crimes at twice the rate of undocumented immigrants.
Okay, so, I gotta.
Okay, all right, you're gonna clarify that. Okay.
No, I just, that data is skewed and I care a lot about being accurate, okay?
Okay.
We don't know, and the reason why we don't know is because in sanctuary cities and states, they literally do not ask about immigration status when someone commits a crime, is convicted of a crime, and spends time in prison.
So I don't know whether the data took, like first of all, those are just cities, okay? They have a significant amount of people, but we're talking about 330 million people in the country. Second of all, I don't know if they got classified as natural born citizens or undocumented or neither, right?
I know.
And if they're classified as neither, it actually doesn't affect the data that much. Do you see what I'm saying? So okay, but either way, so in let's say it's not natural born citizens aren't twice as criminal. They commit 125% more crime, or 50% more crime, or 25% more crime, or maybe it's even. Okay, but there's no data at all saying undocumented immigrants create more crime. And again, there's logic to it because if you're here, you don't want to get caught. Right? And so, okay, my point is, if you demagogued about natural born citizens, look at how absurd it would sound. Natural born citizens, people that were born in America commit more crime. We gotta get rid of those criminals and rapists. We have to kick them all out and only have naturalized citizens. You'd be like, what is this guy, a lunatic? Yes, some small percentage of natural born citizens commit crime and some small percentage are rapists. But we're gonna judge all of them based on that? That makes no sense at all. The same is true of undocumented immigrants.
Right.
A very small percentage commit crimes. Don't defend those guys. Punish them and then kick them out of the country. The rest of them are not like that at all. You know why? Because they're human, okay? I know, shocking. So look, I mentioned the business interest real quick on that. They're busting into these workplaces, right? Restaurants and construction places, etc. And when they're doing that, they're massively disturbing first of all, not only good, hardworking people that were there, okay, but also the business owners and also the community, right? And it's starting to be a little bit like COVID. They're going and shutting down businesses one by one, and then people are afraid to go back into those businesses.
Yep.
So they're worried like, hey, I'm an American citizen, but I'm of Mexican heritage, or I'm from El Salvador originally, or my family is,
That's right, yeah.
So can I go back to that restaurant, or are they gonna pick me up accidentally like they do from time to time, and then not give me rights? The next thing you know, I'm deported. What the? So then those businesses are terribly hurt, and it's shutting them down all across the country.
Okay, but let me just also mention one other thing. I think it's fascinating that they're targeting individuals that ICE believes are undocumented. There was a lot of tough talk about business owners suffering consequences for employing undocumented people. They're not being arrested.
Oh no,
they're not suffering any consequences.
Of course not. In fact, Trump let one guy go.
Yep.
He was charged of hiring a lot of immigrants, but he also did massive financial fraud. He had a 27-year sentence.
So Trump felt bad for him?
Trump's like, oh, there, but for the grace of God go I.
Totally.
So he just gave him a pardon. For like, what? Okay, so he's like, and if you remember why, Donald Trump hired undocumented immigrants. So if you were gonna arrest employers, you'd go and arrest Trump and he'd be like, lawfare, lawfare. No, it's your guys. You're the one who hired undocumented immigrants at almost every construction job that you did in New York, at your golf course until just a couple of years ago, right? And so that's why it's absurd. Okay, last thing, back to fun stuff. So Noam says that she saw a man eating himself.
Right.
Probably saw it on a video online. She's like, I don't know where I saw it, YouTube, YouPorn, I don't know, okay? Just said man eating himself, I checked it out, I don't know. So anyway, but remember, and this goes to please get out of your bubbles, right? So remember, another politician had an interesting story about cannibals. Let's show you.
You calling these guys bad hombres?
And my uncle, they called him Ambrose, Brosey, they called him Bozy. My uncle Bozy was a hell of an athlete, they tell me, when he was a kid. And he became an Army Air Corps before the Air Force came along. He flew those single-engine planes as reconnaissance over war zones. He got shot down in New Guinea. And they never found the body because there used to be a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
So Biden thought his uncle was eaten by cannibals. There were tons of Democrats after he said that who said, no, he's perfectly fine. You just saw that video.
Did you see the people behind Biden? They're like, oh my God.
So, but we can't get rid of the lunatics. So Biden says my uncle was eaten by cannibals. Kristi Noem comes in and goes, oh yeah, we arrested a cannibal who was in the middle of eating himself. Why do they go to these insane stories?
You know, I'm glad that we have Charlie Kirk protecting Western civilization from Mamdani eating rice with his hands.
Okay. This is what Western civilization has devolved to. Like, well, kind of eating each other, right?
I mean, in the fun way, maybe.
But
hopefully.
That's a whole nother thing. All right, guys, we got a bonus episode for you guys. And by the way, Operation Hope after that. So tyt.com/hope to see what we're up to and come and conspire and think through things with us and take action or just ask questions. And the bonus episode, Nancy Mace goes the extra mile to make a total fool of herself. You guys are gonna love it. Hit that big, beautiful join button below or tyt.com/join. We'll see you there.